Hello, welcome back. We're going to do chapter 15 of our book Weasel. One day, the wind was howling around the corners of the cabin, blowing the snow so fast there were no single flakes, just a whirl of white outside the window. I was sitting by the fire, thinking, as usual, about my plan to kill Weasel. Molly sat at the table, writing. I'll ask Pa if I can borrow the gun to do some hunting, I thought. He'd been watching me awful careful lately, and I knew he'd never let me go far in the harsh winter weather by myself. I'd wait till spring. When the weather broke and Pa was busy with plowing, I'd ask if I could go out to the stand of hickory trees on the ridge to see if I could shoot a squirrel. I'd slip away, find Weasel's cabin, sneak up on him, and kill him. This is for Ezra, I'd say before I shot him, and for his wife and for my Pa. Then I'd get crabapple and come on home. Then at last the awful tightness around my chest would go away. Molly interrupted my planning. Would you read this, Nathan? She asked, handed me the paper she'd been working on. I read, Dear Ezra, I hope you find this letter. Pa told us about the stone wall. He says you want to be alone and we should leave you be. But I think it must be sad to be alone. Pa says your wife's kin went to Kansas. If you get there, you could find them and live how you want. Only not alone. Please write back if you find this. Your friend, Molly Fowler. P.S. Pa's leg feels fine. P.S. again, I made blue biscuits too. It's a good letter, Molly, I said, handing it back to her. Do you think he'll ever find it? Yes, she answered. I know he will. Sometimes I'm sure he's been out there watching over us, like Papa said. Do you ever feel it, Nathan? Yes, I said, surprised that Molly knew about the feeling I had of Ezra's nearness. Molly took the paper and rolled it up tightly in a piece of tanned leather. I helped her rub oil into the leather so that the water couldn't get through, and stood by the door as she ran into the swirling snow and tucked the letter between two stones in the wall. She went out to look in the wall every day of the rest of the long winter. In my own way, I was waiting for a sign from Ezra, too. I often hoped that some night, as we sat in the cabin, we'd hear the knock again, and Ezra would be standing outside the door. Sometimes I was so sure he was near I'd stand outside, staring into the darkness, waiting for him to come forward. I imagined him beckoning to me again, and we would go off into the night. Only this time we'd go to Weasel's cabin and kill him. I could feel Weasel out there too, always. Weasel, Ezra, and me, the three of us all tangled up in something that wasn't finished yet. I made a promise to the dark winter sky. I'll finish it someday soon. But I kept my thoughts about Weasel to myself. I wanted to say to Molly, don't worry. I know what will make Ezra happy again, and I'm going to take care of everything. But when I talked like that about what was really on my mind, Pa would look worried, of course, and lift an eyebrow at me as if to say, we'll see about that, young man, like I was still a stupid little boy. He didn't understand at all. One day Pa was mending harness, and when he looked up at me and said, Nathan, I hate to see you wasting your time brooding about that no-good excuse for a human being. What? I asked, startled. Could Pa read my mind? Who? You know who. You're thinking about Weasel again. I can see it on your face, plain as day. As long as Pa had brought it up, I decided to ask him some things I'd been wondering about for a long time. Pa, I began, what would you have done if you were me? What do you mean, son? Pa asked, setting down the harness and looking at me close. At Weasel's cabin that night, you'd have killed him, wouldn't you? You wouldn't have just run like I did. Nathan, is that what's bothering you? That you didn't shoot Weasel when he was lying there half drunk on the ground? You didn't need to kill him, son. All you had to do was make him move so you could get away. But what would you have done? I asked again. Pa pushed his lower lip out and pulled on his whiskers like he did sometimes when he was working on an idea. At last he said slowly, I don't know, Nathan. I honestly don't know. It wasn't me there that night, so I can't say for sure. If I'd been angry enough, I might have. If I'd needed to kill him to get away, I'd have done it. But to just shoot him when he was lying there, well, I can't say. He's done worse to lots of others, I said. He has. So why shouldn't I have killed him? Why shouldn't I kill him now? You did what you had to do that night, Nathan. You kept your wits about you. You escaped. It took a great deal of courage, don't you realize that? But Pa interrupted me, something he didn't often do. But nothing, Nathan. Where did you ever learn that pulling a trigger is what makes a man brave? Do you think you'd feel better about what happened to Ezra and his wife and their baby and all the others he's killed and hurt if you'd shot him there on the ground that night? Yes, I shouted. At least we'd have revenge. Revenge? Pa said slowly. I can see how you'd want revenge, Nathan. I can. But I don't think it would help you now. You may not believe this, but I think that if you had killed Weasel that night, or even some night since then, you'd still feel the way you're feeling now. You'd feel sorry for Ezra and all the others, and killing Weasel wouldn't make it go away. Suddenly, Pa smiled. If it's revenge you want, Nathan, think about this. How do you think Weasel feels about getting shot and outwitted by an 11-year-old boy? How do you think the famous Indian fighter feels about that? I bet he squirms every inch every time he thinks of it. I felt my lips twitching into a smile thinking about what Pa had said. Another thing, Nathan. Killing a man lying helpless on the ground sounds like something Weasel would do. Seems to me that what you did is much better. When I told you I was proud of you, Nathan, I meant it. Your ma would have been proud too. I hope you'll get to where you can feel proud also. I didn't know what to say. The way Pa explained it, it made sense. But then when I thought about Weasel and all the things he'd done, it didn't make sense anymore. But Pa, I said, someone should stop him. Oh, someone will, Pa answered. Someday someone will give him what he deserves, I reckon. Why not me? I shouted. Nathan, if it's up to an 11-year-old boy to do the killing of a man like Weasel. I'm almost 12, I said. Or a 12-year-old boy either, Pa went on. And I don't aim to go taking foolish chances. Not when I've got you and Molly to take care of. I won't do a thing that might leave you two alone again. Do you understand, Nathan? Yes, Pa, I answered. And I did. Pa had me and Molly to worry about. Ezra had a belly full of killing and had turned his back on it. And Pa was dead set against me doing it. Who else was there? What else? What about the law, Pa? Even as I said it, I didn't know what I meant, not exactly. I've heard some about the law, but I'd never actually seen any of it. That's a good question, Nathan, said Pa, pulling on his whiskers again. There's a lot of talk about law in these parts, but you've probably noticed it isn't much more than talk. Law still belongs to the cities and towns. I believe we'll have law out here in the settlement someday, but until then we have to do the best we can on our own. I knew that when I came out here, so there's no sense in me feeling aggrieved about it now. That night I lay in bed staring into the darkness. I'm thinking about everything Pa had said. I felt more confused than ever. Killing was wrong. Everybody said so, but I kept coming back to the same thing and it wouldn't go away. Weasel was out there. He could come here and hurt us. He could be hurting other folks even now. Maybe Pa could rest easy knowing that, but I couldn't. Maybe Pa could wait for the day when he'd have the law to take care of men like Weasel, but I couldn't.